Hello, everyone. We'd love to welcome you all to Rock the Lyceum. For those of you joining us for the first time, Rock the Lyceum Lecture Series, excuse me, is hosted by the NCC's Office of Engagement, Student Engagement, and Leadership, along with the Lyceum Committee. This series brings in several of the nation's top entrepreneurs and thought leaders to engage in students in relevant topics in education, entertainment, politics, and social justice. Good evening. I'm Rashawn Jones II. I'm a senior studying in mass comm, majoring in mass comm, concentration in PR, and I'm currently the head student manager for the men's basketball program. Since this evening's discussion will be more of an open dialogue, we would like to go over a few housekeeping rules. Please make sure that you place in the chat we have a desire to speak so we can call on you. We would like to maintain some type of order so everyone can be heard and be granted opportunity to be heard when desired. We apologize in advance if at the conclusion we have not gotten to everyone who had a desire to speak. However, we will make every effort to respect everyone's time along with attempting to get everyone who has a desire to speak. Before you speak, if you would share your name, classification, and major prior to posing your question or sharing your input, it would definitely assist us in learning who we have the pleasure of engaging with and sharing ideas. Thank you. Over to you, Alexis.
Well, good evening, Eagles and guests. My name is Alexis Harp. I'm a junior mass communication student concentrating in broadcast media from Durham, North Carolina, and I currently serve as the Student Activities Board President. So I have the honor this evening to share a bit about our amazing Rock the Lyceum speaker and NCCU alum, Whitney Fry. Fry is a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, where she was a varsity cheerleader, and attended North Carolina Central University School of Law, where she served as an articles editor for the Law Review, graduating with high honors. Fry began her legal career as a policy intern in the Office of General Counsel at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. She then served as an attorney advisor of the U.S. Social Security Administration with a primary focus on administrative law. She currently serves as the director of Safe Sport for USA Basketball. At USA Basketball, Whitney has been able to develop her passion for diversity, inclusion, and the development of others. Everyone joining us this evening, can we please all give a huge virtual round of applause for our Rock the Lyceum speaker, Whitney Fry. Good evening, Miss Fry. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Mark.
Okay, so I didn't want to give too much off in the introduction, but I want you to start us off with in regards to leveraging your legacy, what that means to you, and how can we apply that in your life and ours as well.
So my story actually starts on Market Street. You all probably know where Market Street is, where everybody is like parking where they should be parking beside the law school. That's actually the address that's on my birth certificate. So my dad was a central student at North Carolina Central Law School when I was born, and so my story actually starts there. But before that, my granddad actually was the first African American Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. And he was a number of firsts, but one of the things that he did was to be one of the first members of North Carolina's legislature. And his students at NCCU School of Law actually paid his registration. So when I'm thinking about legacy, I'm thinking not only what comes before you, but what comes after you. So I did a little quick etymology research, which means looking at the words, what do they mean? And so legacy could mean denoting or relating to software or hardware that has been superseded, but it's difficult to replace because of its wide use. A thing handed down by a predecessor, or the actual root of the word could be a person delegated. So what I think about is I'm the person delegated, or you are the person delegated to be in a position where you have made such an impact that your absence really leaves a vacuum, like that you can't be replaced. That you are actually making inroads for not only the people who come before you, but the people who come after you. But also understanding that you're also part of someone else's legacy. So we're all parts of James Shepard's legacy. I'm part of my dad's legacy, my granddad's legacy, and just making sure that the impact that we make is meaningful, and knowing that whatever you're doing has value and has purpose. And so I think about my other granddad. He was one of those people that people always called on, and made sure that, whenever he was doing something, they're like, call Big H, call, Mr. Holloway, if you broken something. And a lot of the impact that he had, he didn't even know. So I'll say one time, there's a family, and so he's from Roxborough, and I'm actually from Greensboro, North Carolina. So Roxborough is a little bit north of Durham, but he was actually helping a family, a white family in Roxborough. And after that family's patriarch died, they found out he was a member of the Klan. And so you think about, the impact that he had to really help that family enough that the father was even a Klansman. So you think about some of those things that you're doing and making sure that the impact that you have really makes sense, and helps those who come behind you before you. You're representing more than just yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christine Alcox. I am a senior kinesiology major, and I'm also the president of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And for you, Ms. Fry, I wanted to ask, since you've really accomplished a lot throughout your career, I wanted to ask if you faced, any rejection or adversity. And I also wanted to ask how you managed to be resilient in the face of overcoming those obstacles.
Well, yeah, I think everybody deals with rejection. You go to a dance, I'm not talking about that, but I think, even getting out of law school and not necessarily preparing myself to look for a job, or out of college and looking for a job, and sending in your resume and having those cover letters and people, tearing those things apart, and you're like, dang, can I ever get through this? Or wanting to have a job, or wanting to get to a certain position, and not necessarily achieving what you want at that time. I think my family has been very impactful in getting over some of those things, because they've gone through it themselves. I've had friends who definitely are confidants that have helped me to see what's in me. But also, I think part of the resilience in me is taking a personal assessment of how I have integrated into certain things. What things can I improve? And I think each year that I've kind of progressed in my career, I've learned that challenges are not necessarily always a indicator of failure. And I think a lot of times we're programmed to see things as black and white, as opposed to a catalyst for change, or to kind of move you forward. So that's kind of the way that I think about being resilient in that way. But there are times where it's just like, I can't do this, have your little cry and move on. But actually really finding the passion that you have and being pushed by your passions and not necessarily by your title. I think that's helped me a lot more too, in identifying what I really am driven to do, and what I think I've probably been created to do. So those minor setbacks necessarily aren't, I think, indicators that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. I think it's an indication of maybe I am on the right track, but maybe I need to pivot here. And so utilizing a lot of the experiences that I've had as a cheerleader, as an attorney, being in different spaces, being a professor, even that, was a difficult time, because it's my first time. I'm teaching law school, and I want to know, am I doing the right thing for these students? And so really saying, okay, Whit, you are really passionate about teaching these people. People aren't just going to get it. And so being realistic with yourself. I think a lot of times with this, with social media and things like that, it's easy to have that idealistic view of the world and how you're interacting with it. And gotta be real with yourself. Life isn't always the filter. You gotta put the work in. And so sometimes I gotta be real with myself. Did I put enough work in here? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. And so taking a step back and actually assessing what I've done in certain situations.
Yeah, as a follow-up question to that, you kind
Mm-hmm.
of alluded a lot to personal assessment and really assessing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask about how maybe that or any other, I guess, tools have helped you to gain clarity as it pertains to what it is that you wanted to do career-wise.
Yeah, so I think part of it is actually I created a internal, I guess, a personal motto for myself. I'm very mission based, and I have a mission based approach. And so one of the things is one, each birthday I actually create a theme for myself. You know, because you think about like New Year's resolutions. Most people are done by like February 14th. So that's why I used to take a break. I'd be like, look, I'm gonna go to the gym on February 14th after everybody else has gotten through there. But I think each year I've done something to push myself and I've identified certain like holes that I think are, hindering me from doing certain things. And so one of them was to do something that I was scared of. And that was actually putting myself out there and going to different things. And one of those things happened to be the North Carolina Bar Association's Leadership Academy. And in that, we had to create a personal motto. And so my personal motto was to create an imprint of positive change wherever I go. And so that actually helped me to kind of refocus and understand what I really wanted to do. But then when I was at the North Carolina, I don't think Alexis put that in there, but I was also general counsel for the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. And so working there, I was able to see kind of the disparities that education and has across North Carolina, the gaps that people may have. And so I thought maybe it's access to education that I really am passionate about, and utilizing sports as that value, as that ramp to get you there. But then actually kind of moving forward in my career, I figured out that it was actually just access and to opportunities. And can I be that person to be the connector to opportunities and utilizing sport? Being at USA Basketball helps a lot, when you're trying to have these conversations because, it's a well-known name. And, there are so many avenues that we can touch because we're representing the United States. So when I think about that, I think part of the things that I've done to figure out what my passions are really just kind of stepping back and finding what are the things that I found most joy in, and what do I work harder at. And so I don't want to be the only person in a position. Like I talked about my granddad being the first Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. He was able to introduce Barack Obama in Greensboro when they had that rally there. And so I looked at that picture and I was like, wow, that's an amazing thing. You got two people who were first. But, there has to be a follow to that. You have to make sure that they're not last. And so whatever position I'm in, I don't want to be the first or the only. I want to be the person that's actually helping others behind there. That's where certain fields and in certain industries, it's the connections that you have. People always talk about your net worth being your net worth. Your network being your net worth. But if you don't necessarily know how to get there, how can you, really make that work for you? And so can I be that catalyst for change? Can I be that connector to help individuals, reach the goals that they think that they have, or, find the passion within themselves, or, just being a nice person, talking to people, you find a lot more about yourself by actually interacting. And so I've done away with that hierarchical type of, understanding of industries and things like that. And I look at it the people. And so when you look at the people, you find what they're passionate about, what they're scared of. That's one thing I think about is, if you have a boss, ask them, what are they most afraid of? Because then you can be the person to fix that. Because you often find that a lot of times it's something that is really, it's pervasive across, whatever industry you're in. But it may also help you to identify, what do I want to help fix? And I think that that's part of my, how I've identified my passion. What do I think that I can do in the position that I'm in to fix whatever issue that I see as a problem? We've had, different, I guess DE&I things at work and things like that. And I figure out certain things that make me most passionate, where I'm like, hey, this is what and trying to explain how these different underconnected groups and social economic statuses, and how diversity of thought benefits your human capital. So that's kind of how I've kind of jumped from thing to thing with regard to my passion, and understanding that it's not linear. It's something that's going to be ever evolving.
If I could, you mentioned about you created this motto or this adage that you wanted to do something that you were afraid of. Can you talk a little bit about how dangerous comfort zones can be in regards to, not learning how to stretch yourself, engaging in things that may not necessarily be popular, cool, or familiar, and how that has really aided you?
Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure my parents have joined the call, but my mom is one of those people who would always make sure that I'm doing what I need to do. But then will also call me out when I'm just like, I don't want to do that. I was one of those kids that if I don't want to do it, I'm not gonna do it. But I, found myself wanting to be more than I was, but I was the one that was holding me back. And so that's the reason why I kind of put that motto out there, because it was, I think when you're comfortable, um, there's nothing. Growth does not grow in comfort. You can be stagnant in comfort. You could be president of whatever, but if you stay in the same place, you're not going to necessarily innovate the space that you're in. And I think life is all about innovation and building on what you've created that base from. So that's really kind of like leveraging your legacy. And so I've had people in my life who would actually push me to do things that I didn't want to do. Like in high school, I was just like, oh, I can't do that. Applying for a scholarship. And I know my guidance counselor, her name is Gwen Atkinson, and she says she remembers it to this day that I told her I had to get my hair done. And she was like, Whitney, if you don't get in here and do this scholarship for the Moorhead, and I actually ended up being a semifinalist for the Moorhead, because she forced me to do it. And so I realized that I couldn't have these outside forces continuing to push me and see more in me than I saw in myself. So I was just like, look, I'm going to get out there, even if it makes me nervous. I don't like being the center of attention. And when I got to these places, like, you're not even the center of attention. Like, ain't nobody paying no attention to you, but you're here. So what are you going to do with this time? Like, now you're here. So that was part of that leadership academy, is I wanted to be connected to the legal field, and be in those positions where I could really see what others saw in me. And so that was really that turning point in my life to, and then I used to tell that to my students, before COVID is, join the North Carolina Bar Association or those different organizations that were free at the time. Like, you don't even have to pay for it. And you're in there with the people who are making these decisions, who could get you jobs and things like that. And I was like, and if, I actually got this for one of my friends whose name is Dexter Robinson. But he was like, he told his students as well at Carolina, look, go to these things. They got free food. You hungry. You a college student. Your refund check kind of getting kind of low. So go ahead and go get something free to eat. If they ain't talk about nothing that you like to hear, go home. But at least you're there. And so then you're able to connect with these different people. And so I realized that some of these people at different schools had, different jobs on their boards. So I would use their passwords to look at the different job boards. Or I studied at Duke. I was there so much that they thought I was that I'm not necessarily feel that I can just because I've
So, Ms. Fry, if you can hear us, the last part of your response, we weren't able to hear you because your connection went out a little bit. And so while she's reconnecting,
hear me now?
if any of, yep, we can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Right on that.
Still trying to reconnect on you. So in the interim, I'll throw it to one of you guys in regards to, has there ever been a time where when you initially were thinking about engaging in some type of experience or opportunity and you were like, I really don't want to do it, and what got you out of your comfort zone to engage in that, and what did you learn from that experience?
For me, I'll say one of my mentors, her name's Lucy Mason. She works in like student athlete academic services, and she had recommended for me to do this forum like for the NFL. It was like a careers in football forum, and that wasn't necessarily something that I ever thought that I would, be interested in, but I, took her advice. She wrote me a letter of recommendation, and this was like during winter break, so I was kind of just not trying to like do anything over my break. But I, like I said, took her advice and went to the Careers in Football Forum, and because of that, I was able to make a lot of like networking connections and all that type of stuff. And I actually met a lady who works with like ex NFL players to get their resumes together so that they can, get jobs after their time spent in the NFL. And so I reached out to her and she was able to help me with my resume. And a few months later, I, was able to get a job. And I think a huge part of that was me just taking that chance and doing something a little bit outside of my comfort zone. And I'm also taking advantage of, the network that was at that event and making those connections so that I was able to benefit, from the environment that I was in.
That is awesome. I think that we have good connection now.
Lord have mercy.
That's what look. That's what happens, right?
That's what happens. You gotta roll with the punches.
That's right. RJ, can you do us a favor? Because I know in our pre-conversation we talked a little bit about networking. So I know that we had a question about that. Could you go ahead and pose that for the group?
Yes, I got you.
Good, RJ?
Can you all not hear me?
We can hear you now.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
I guess you were having the same issues I was having, huh?
I guess you just passed that, bug fix over here, I guess.
Don't blame me, RJ, now.
Oh. I really don't know what's going on. Okay, so can somebody else answer it? Because my computer's messing up.
Yeah, so basically one of the questions we had specifically you were talking about earlier about understanding that your net worth is your network is your net worth. So that's something that we try to stay essential, especially to like the incoming class of students, is how many people you network with can really put you in doors that you probably would have never been in. So one of the questions we had was, how would you suggest that we approach networking with industry experts? So doing internships or going to their career fairs, and also working on virtual platforms, especially right now, like LinkedIn and Facebook and all different types of stuff. So getting to be able to speak with other people, how would you suggest we go about that?
Right. Okay. So, when you're talking about LinkedIn, one of my mentors actually told me, she said, don't do anything on LinkedIn that you wouldn't do in real life. And so when I'm talking to students and, they may like USA basketball, even, people who aren't students, just click and link, let's connect. And you wouldn't walk up to somebody and say, hey, my name is Alexis, let's connect, and then just walk away. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to connect, with? And so providing that little snippet is definitely helpful in order to kind of get that in, because you can find some common ground. But if you're just adding me, just because, what's your purpose in that? So I think part of it is, one, find your purpose, and then two, make sure, if you're having these, say you do get a meeting, you are actually in charge of that meeting. Even though people say your time is valuable, whenever somebody's reaching out, they'll say, well, whenever you're available. I want you to be able to tell me, okay, these are the time, dates that I'm available to speak with you. Let me know if your schedule, aligns with that, because, you're taking the initiative. And then when you're talking, have questions. Be mindful of what you really want to get from the conversation. Not necessarily, I just want to know, about basketball, that I don't even play basketball. I'm 5 feet tall. What do you really want to gain from this interaction? And really treat it as a relationship. A lot of times people talk about networking, and it's just really going to events and talking to people and handing out your card. Really trying to build that connection with someone as a relationship building, time, so that you can actually they can vouch for you. They can know the skills that you have. They can really see things in you that you may be interested in. So I have a mentor, and her daughter actually goes to Central. So I've been, hi Lauren, if you join the chat, but she actually saw some jobs that I would have never thought about, but because she knows me and we've talked and she understands some of the things that I really want to do, she sent it my way. So I would think more so about thinking about the relationship building aspect of it. And then when you're talking about going to, events when we are, I guess not under quarantine, is really going to things that interest you. Not necessarily just doing it just for the fun of it, just really going to things that interest you. And if people have made time for you, take advantage of that time. I actually had a student at the law school that was part of something at the bar association. We have coffee with an attorney, and a lot of times people think about sports entertainment, they want to meet with the attorney, and because she's a Central student, I wanted to meet with her too, but it was up to her to actually schedule the thing. She did not. And I'm not doing this as an indictment on her. Obviously, I'm not saying her name, but I'm using it as an example and also part of a legacy. Because if it hadn't been, if it had been another attorney at a big law firm, it'd be like, oh, these are Central students from the law school. No. So I kindly wrote her a letter letting her know, like, you were supposed to reach out to me at this time. You did not. So, I just want to, let you know that this is actually something that could follow you. And she reached out, can we still meet? I said no. So, you think about it that way. And then if there are people that you don't necessarily click with or connect with, it's okay. You don't necessarily have to have a relationship with every single person. But those relationships that you really value, nurture them. And, reach out to people. Hey, how are you doing? In town, or this is something that I'm interested in. Could you help me with this? Or just even having discussions or talks. And just reaching out. I still do it myself. And I'm, knee deep in my career. So just thinking about, like, not even just thinking about your network is your net worth. It's not necessarily just always about the people, the number of people around you, but it's the value and the relationships that you have and the connections that you have, so that you can utilize them for your benefit to leverage your legacy. That gets you? Yes, sir, RJ?
I think it was a great answer. You actually touched on something that I wanted to ask you. You talked about building relationships and networking as well, but can you kind of talk more about being intent with that as well? Like making sure that it's genuine and like basically just making sure that it's not like for fun.
What do you mean, like as a student
As a student, as a
or
professional,
on the other end?
both
Yeah,
actually, from a student
I think you
standpoint and from
should
your
have to be.
standpoint.
Well, I think one, you have to be authentically you. That's really one of my, the things I tell people. You have to be yourself. And so sometimes, there is humor involved. It doesn't have to be so serious all the time. And so I think one of the things that I've encountered is people thinking that they have to be a certain way. So, hi, Miss Fry, I would like to meet with you, type of deal. And it kind of feels very plastic and stoic. But if you are just really, hi, my name is Rashawn, I'm really interested in this, that, and third, and being purposeful about what you want this person, to talk with this person about. And it could even be like, I don't necessarily know all that you do, but I would love to understand a little bit more. Like, this is your role. What do you do here? And so I think it can be fun, but I think on the other end is, you have to, that person has to be receptive as well to that type of, to forging that type of relationship. And you just kind of have to be persistent as well. So persistent, being purposeful, and understanding that, it can be fun. It doesn't always have to be that business like thing. When we're having those conversations prior to this, it was a real cool type of vibe. because you feel comfortable enough to ask questions, ask the hard questions. And so you just kind of cultivating that type of relationship and that type of atmosphere so that you can put yourself in a position to forge a meaningful and lasting relationship. And it's not one that's just based on what you're trying to get from someone else, but it's just really trying to have a connection in general.
You talked about a little bit earlier in your statement about being like authentically you and
Mhm.
something that's authentic to you and your experiences attending both a PWI and an HBCU. So can you talk a little bit about how both of those experiences have shaped you as a person?
Yeah, so being being a cheerleader at Carolina was really helpful for me because I was able to understand that I'm representing more than myself. So one of the things we used to yell out before every game was pride, 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 and more pride. So it's pride in yourself, pride in who you represent, and pride in where you come from. But I always used to say that um, you know, Carolina was really like the land of opportunity. There were so many opportunities that were available to me that I just did not take advantage of because I think a lot of times obviously I'm a black woman, I'm a black woman from the South, I'm from Greensboro, and so you know you always taught when you go over someone's house, you don't ask for nothing, you're not gonna ask for no food, don't you're not hungry type of deal. And so I think that's one of the things that really I had to work on is asking for things because I had teammates and people who may not have been as qualified as me, but would take advantage of the opportunities that were available to them. And so I think that being the first public university in the country gives you that wide network of people and individuals to interact with. But when I got to Central, I think part of the history of it is that you're building people and you're understanding that you are really feeding the individual and their profession because that's just kind of what you had to do. And so all of my professors were really invested in me. And I was able to take advantage of that. So I was able to be on the faculty recruitment committee where I'm flying out to DC to interview professors who want to be part of, Central's faculty. And I was able to see firsthand that whole interview process. And that wasn't something I don't think I would have gotten at Carolina, but they were actually valuing my opinion. They're like, what do you think about this? Would this person be good to teach con law? I'm like, I don't know. There was one lady who came every day at the wrong time. And then in her interview, she started singing. And they're looking at me, what do you think? And it was really good to me to see these people who are, feeding into me and understanding who I was. So I think, having that personal connection with professors who are building me to be the person that I am and that I want to be and part of the profession that I really want to be a part of, and then merging the two between the opportunities that Carolina has really expanded my network. And it's expanded my ability to really understand the impact that I can have. And it gives me a different perspective when I'm in rooms with people who have only, who've gotten there just from that PWI experience. You think about the Olympic movement. I would have never thought that I would have been a student, from he's actually an NCCU graduate. But there's few of us there. And so for me, it's like, I want to be able to provide those opportunities to merge that experience so that people know that, it's possible. And, I love my HBCU experience. And so it's actually given me the catalyst to want to do more for other HBCUs. I mean, I was raised by A&T. So I will say that, I really think that there's a community aspect to it as well, because there are so many students and people, there are so many people who couldn't go to school, and their legacy is part of my legacy. And the reason why my granddad was able to go to Carolina is because you have students at Central who transferred to Carolina because they wouldn't let them in. But you think about the surrounding community, you see how embedded Central is in that community in Durham. And so you think about the impact that you can have and how you can embed yourself to make positive change. So I think merging the two has made me a better person, made me a better attorney. because I consider the person first, as opposed to just the title. I'm not trying to go to some big law firm just so I can get money. No, I'm trying to really do something that makes a difference.
You talked about going from HBCU, going from PWI to HBCU. I was going to ask, can you talk a little bit more about maybe, a big moment or a big learning lesson that you learned in that transition from going from PWI to HBCU that can help students out?
It's a good question. I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned is that there was a professor I had named Professor Ringer. And in class, if you didn't know the answer, he would allow you to talk to your partners. So you have a partner on one side and one partner on the other. And understanding that the people that you are with are the people that will help you. So when I'm getting out in some of these jobs, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I can ask my friend Sid, who is one of my partners, to what's the answer, or can you help me with this? And so I think part of it was really understanding that there's a connectivity to the profession that I'm in, but there's also a connectivity to the people that I've learned to be with. And I think that the transition there's a transition of being the only and being in a position where you are really congregating because you look like someone else, and then having that relationship there, but then kind of transitioning over to NCCU where we all have the same goal in mind, and we're finding that connection to build each other up together.
So earlier you were talking about mentoring and having a mentor. So can you explain what mentoring is to you, and then what do you think the roles are of a mentee and a mentor relationship?
Okay. So I think I have a number of mentors, and in different industries. And I think that that's very important because it's the diversity of thought that you need in order to have someone to invest in you and to see something in you, but also to provide you that sounding board. And I think the role of a mentor is someone who will provide you sound and cogent advice to help you make good decisions for yourself, but to also be that person that uplifts you in those moments where you have those moments of self doubt. And I think I have plenty of them, whether they're in the movement, which we call the Olympic movement, like the DE&I director for the U.S. Olympic Committee. Her name is Nisha Rucker. I just met her, and I was just like, hey, let's have a meeting, and we just talked a lot. And so, sometimes when I'm having those things, like, I don't know if I can do that. And she'll send me a gift like, this is how I see you. And so it's kind of like, this is how I should see myself. And so I think the role of a mentor is to really shine that mirror to you, to unlock some of the things that you don't see in yourself, but then also to be able to provide opportunities, to provide advice, but also just to be that relationship builder. And I think I count all of my mentors as friends. And I think that the diversity of thought they have helps me to understand the best way for me to approach difficult situations and mundane situations in life. But even just to have a conversation about a TV show that I've had, just or a podcast or something like that, just really to be something different than what I have, and utilizing their life experiences so that I can be the best person I can be. It's really about leveraging their legacy so that I can leverage my own. Did I answer your question? Because it's two parts, right? Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Christine.
Oh, you're fine.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
kind of wanted to switch gears and kind of
Mhm.
talk about your involvement in your industry. You talked about creating relationships with people outside of your industry, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about your experience within the industry and kind of the misconceptions that come with working in sports.
So do you mean like being an attorney, or just kind of like,
Yes.
So I think a lot of people glamorize sports entertainment. They're like, I want to be in sports entertainment because it looks fun and I like basketball. But at the same time, for me, it's like, I think we had this conversation before. If you're going to come and work with me or work for me in this industry, you're going to go to work. And if you really just want to go to the game, you can buy a ticket. And so I think part of some of the misconceptions is that it's glamorous work or it's very niche driven. But I think the sports industry is just like any other industry. It does have, a lot of things that other industries have. They need employment attorneys. They need HR. They need, people to, create COVID protocols and things of that nature. And so I think those were the, some of the misconceptions that people have. Yes, there are perks. I have really cool gear. I've had, the opportunity to travel, and I've had the opportunity to interact with some really, high profile people that, I probably wouldn't otherwise be able to do, but I have to get my work done. And sometimes that work is a little bit more intense because of the eyes that are on it. So I think that was one part of your question, but I can't recall the second part of your question.
No, that was fine. I was just
Okay.
wanting to hear about the misconceptions within the industry, and kind of just to piggyback on that question, you kind of talked about how earlier in your career you were a cheerleader. So if you want to kind of expand upon how you went from there to working with USA Basketball.
Yeah, so I was actually a cheerleader. We won the national championship when I was, when I was in school. It was in 2005. But I think part of that actually helped me in my legal career and in my career, just in general, because I was able to see it from a different point of view. I'm able to see how everything interacts. And I think a lot of people just see the ball in the court. But I'm looking at the referees, I'm looking at the officials, I'm looking at the insurance, I'm looking at some of the people who are coming down the stands and helping to usher people in. I'm thinking about slip and falls. Even when I was at the high school association, I'm thinking about, if we have confetti, how are we going to clean this up? I'm thinking about operations, how many volunteers are we going to have? Do we have independent contractors? Are we going to, have us do this? How long am I going to be here? So, you're thinking about all those things. But, when I was a cheerleader, I was able to just kind of talk with everybody. I had relationships with a lot of people. And so when I got to law school, I kind of expanded on that. I was like, I think I want to be in this industry. And so my first internship, which was unpaid, was with an attorney who was a sports and entertainment law, sports and entertainment attorney, but he also did municipal law, which does go together. You're talking about cities and there's sports and entertainment, or whatever. But he actually introduced me to a guy who's now a really high level person in the UNC system. But he was actually working for Wasserman Media Group at that time. And I just kind of introduced myself to him. I gave him an outline. So it's just kind of like almost like a study guide because he said he was studying for the California bar. I had no idea that the outline I gave him had nothing to do with that bar. Like they don't even test whatever I gave him. But we kept in touch over the years. And so when I was at the Social Security Administration after law school, he was at the high school association. He left and he said he could think of no one else to replace him but me. And so that's kind of how I got into the high school association, into that sports realm. It's, again, it's those relationship building, keeping those connections and talking and having them understand what you really want. And so after that, he actually knew the CEO of USA Basketball, and they needed somebody who had my skill set because he knew my skill set. And I flew out here and talked to my CEO, Jim Tooley, and I guess the rest is history. So I think it was more so about being an intentional in what I wanted to do, but let people know, but also not being upset that the part that I thought the place that I wanted to be, I was not there yet. Because I think that every experience I've had has actually helped me to understand, where I am a little bit more. So being at the Social Security Administration, we have, it's not necessarily laws. The administrative portion of it is really like you're following Social Security's rules. And every other place I've been, we have to follow our own rules. We're developing our own rules. We have to understand them better than everybody else. So, even though I didn't see it at that time, it actually really helped me to be the person, I guess the professional than I am at USA Basketball.
So if you would take the opportunity, so contextually, we can derive that the reason why you've been able to create these networks and engage in fruitful mentoring relationships has a lot to do with a certain level of intrinsic motivation and proper preparation. And so I think that it's important, especially transitioning from an environment like college or university, where there are staff and administrators where their number one priority is to pour into and resource, right? And that is their number one objective. But then going into the world of work, how important is it as, you know, someone entering into that space to really create the desire for someone to pour into them? So it's a little bit of a shift. So if you could expound on that.
So, okay, I didn't know if that was, I thought you had said it. I was like, yes, but yeah, I think that you actually have to create those opportunities for learning. I think being a consummate learner has helped me to understand that I don't know everything. And I think that that's really kind of one of the things I saw when I taught is that, I know more than you, but no, I'm going to be more prepared than you. But I have to admit that I don't know everything. But there are some people who may know more than I do and may be able to help me to see that, there's a hole here. And I think being an attorney, I would say that you don't meet an attorney on the best day of your life. But, when you meet me, it may be the best day of your life, but, because I want to make sure that I'm cultivating a space that is open for, I won't say criticism, but it's open for the ability for somebody to say, hey, wait, that doesn't work for me. What can we do here? And understanding that I'm not going to be the expert, but that I have to know the experts in order for me to make an expertly, crafted decision. And so I think when you're an attorney in these spaces and when you're providing advice, you have to know that you don't know it all, but you have to figure out how can I get to the answer that I need. And for me, it's through people. And I feel like the human aspect of things is often overlooked. And so when you're looking at, from the top down, you're going to miss a lot. And so I'm trying to look at the level that everybody sees from their point of view. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm always going to be asking someone that's in a position of higher authority. I may be asking the receptionist, how does this work? You've been here for 10 years. How do I, make something that works better? How do I communicate with my boss better? And I think that that's really the crux of it all is finding people where they are and utilizing their skills to help create a mission and to move forward with that mission in a way that makes sense and is one that doesn't leave anybody behind. Because I think a lot of times when you're looking at it from that top-down view, you can lose a lot of the perspective. I mean, that's just kind of, the picture thing, thinking about like if you stand on top of the Empire State Building, if you're looking down, you're going to lose perspective. So you're going to have to figure out how can I look down, up, middle, around, and finding people that will say, all right, Whit, I see what you're doing for yourself in this organization, in this committee, in the steering committee. How can I help? And I think being in a position, and I think I've always said this, where I'm at is I'm in a position of service. So how can I help you? And so really the way that I modify my approach is depending upon which department I'm talking to. And so when you're thinking about how can I be of service, you have to figure out what is each person in this section doing and how can I reach them where they are so that I'm not disrupting their day, so that they have to ask me 18,000 questions. I'm going to do it the way that you like so that we can get the ball moving. So, I think modifying your approach, tailoring your approach is one thing that for us well. And then just kind of letting people know, you can't get fed if you don't ask. And if they don't know who you are either.
So, quick question. I heard you talk about your career stops and everything. And I know for every career stop, you had the teaching moment and the learning moment as well. So if you had anything that you can go back and tell your younger self to do, what would it be and why? Or would you approach anything different to how you approached it before?
I mean, I think that everything that I've done has helped me to kind of, be the person I am. But I think if what I would tell my younger self is to just simply try. There are so many points where I would just be like, I don't feel like doing it. I'm not doing it. It scares me. I'm not doing it. And so I think that really hindered my ability, as a younger person to just really move forward. I think about, people talk about playing the game. And there was a time where I was very headstrong and I did not want to play the game. And it came across as being rude and disrespectful, into people in positions of authority. So I think understanding where I am, but also utilizing the people around me and listening a lot more. I think I would listen more than I spoke because, you think that you know everything, but it's just really beneficial just to hear what people are saying. Um, and, I think just kind of being in different positions is just learning how to tailor my approach. Would I change anything? No, because I think that it's helped me to be the person I am now, and those lessons were necessary. Um, but I just would tell my younger self to try hard, um, and know that the lessons that you're learning are beneficial to you, and just to absorb them and use them as you move forward.
Okay, so what has been one of the best lessons that you have learned, and how has that helped you in becoming successful?
I think one of the best lessons I've learned is that questions are not always challenges; they're opportunities to, to inform. I think a lot of times when you're passionate about something, you can take things very personally. I know I have, and I do. And I think that the lessons that I've learned are that you just have to take those questions and use those as really catalysts for making impactful and meaningful decisions. And so I think a lot of times if you just sit there and argue with people, that doesn't help at all. And I think taking that time to step back and really not put myself in a defensive posture where I'm not really absorbing the information on what they're trying to get across, um, would probably have been a lot more beneficial to me if I had just kind of really settled down. So I think questions are not always challenges. They're really opportunities to inform. And I think as a young attorney, that was one of the things I really had to learn. There was a guy named Mo Green when I was on the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. And he used to be the superintendent of Guilford County Schools, and he was asking me a lot of questions. And I was just like, oh my God, like, dang, does he not think I know what I'm talking about? Like, I prepared like all night for these questions. Like, I knew they were going to ask them, but he was just asking all of them. And then he brought me to the side after that and said, Whit, I know you know what you're talking about. I'm just asking for clarity. And because some of the people in the room may not ask these questions or know. So for me, he was like, just, it's okay. So I think, really managing my emotions because I felt like he was challenging me personally. But it wasn't that he was challenging me at all. He was really just trying to help. And I think I needed him, you need people to tell you, like, I didn't think you didn't know what you're talking about. So, I mean, I was always prepared, but I don't think I was prepared um, for the situations that I would be, put in where it seemed like I was being questioned or, it wasn't being questioned at all. It was really just an opportunity to inform.
To ask, I know we're kind of short on time here, but I wanted to ask, the sports industry is very tough. It's always evolving, always changing, and I wanted to get your opinion on what keeps you coming back. After you have hard days, after you have tough times, like what is it that keeps you going, and why have you decided to kind of persevere and push through those things?
Because I feel like nobody else probably job for me, and now I really think that I was placed here for a reason, and I think that um, I don't want to give up on myself, and I don't want to give up on the people that could possibly be coming behind me, or that I can possibly be affecting. I know my grandmother gave me a paperweight on Christmas, said, "What would you attempt to do if you knew you kind of could not fail?" And so I think that I learned to see hard days as not as failures, but really just taking it one day at a time and figuring out that I'm here to be that voice. I'm usually the youngest person or the only Black person, maybe the only woman, maybe the only attorney, um, obviously the only HBCU graduate. And understanding that I really want to be in a position where I'm providing access and opportunities to people who normally wouldn't receive them. And so if I leave, how can that happen? I mean, obviously there are other people who may have that same um, you know, passion, but if I leave, who else am I failing? So that's what I'm talking about, leveraging my legacy. I'm going to be that predecessor. So how can I be a predecessor if I'm gone? So you just kind of take it day by day and understand that it's not necessarily um, the day that ruins you. It's your perception of it, and how do you move past this? What am I going to learn from it? And just talking with people. Some of my friends are, they're like, "Wait, come on now, that wasn't that bad." Or, I understand where you're coming from, but what are you going to do about it? So I think having that thought of, I'm not going to give up on myself or other people, has always pushed me forward.
Okay, so right now we're going to open up the floor. If anybody in the audience has any questions that they would like to ask, you can go ahead and drop those in the chat room.
We didn't have a question, but we did have a comment, just some feedback in terms of Ms. Fry, thank you for being here and definitely enjoying listening and gaining some very helpful information. So it's great to see that our students are walking away, with some nuggets. So that's always good.
That was the goal.
That's right.
I wanted to ask really quickly. I think it was before, like in our pre-meeting, but you shared like your kind of motto with us. So would you mind like sharing that again, and then kind of what inspired that, and how you continue to use that even today?
Yep. It was creating an imprint of positive change wherever I go. And I think part of it was being a Tar Heel. They used to have those videos where, I'm Whitney Fry, I'm a Tar Heel, but you think about it, and it's really something that really stuck with me, is just having the ability to be in a place and say Whitney was here. And so, talking to old bosses and, being like, yo, I wish you were here with right now. Those are the things that really, pushed me along, and seeing how my family interacted with other people, like my granddad, both of them have always, and my grandmothers have always been those people that you speak to everybody. And it's not necessarily you're forcing people to, like we don't force kids to talk to people they don't want to talk to. That's another thing. But it's really like not necessarily seeing people for what they are, but who they are. So, just talking to people and understanding that, your presence can have an impact. Your presence can be, the change in someone's day, and it can actually change your day. I took time to just make sure that I'm speaking it, like at USA Basketball. I used to make a point before we talk to talk to our receptionist every morning, because she was actually at the other end of the hallway and at the other entrance, and it was just like I would never have seen her if I didn't get up from my desk and go talk. And so I think it's very important for people to know who you are, and not just what you do, because obviously being an attorney is, nobody want to talk to you. You telling them what to do, and they have to know, the person that I am in order to take advice and actually implement it. And I think that that's another thing. Is like when you're in positions where you're actually leading others, they have to trust you enough to take your advice and implement it. And so I think that just making sure that I'm that person that doesn't mar the profession that I'm in, but also doesn't cause harm to others. I think it's just really important that you just make sure that you're that person that just has an impact in that and leave people in a place where they say, okay, I can trust her. Let me go to her if I have a question about this. Or, there's this opportunity. I think Whit might be good at that because I've talked to her, not necessarily on that level where she's always just telling me the legal ramifications of something, but, I just know who she is. And I think knowing who I am as a complete person, aside from my title, is very important to me. And so that's the reason why I kind of created that motto and taken a mission-based approach.
All right, so I'm gonna take it as nobody has any more questions. So I just want to thank you, Ms. Fry, for joining us this evening, as well as our viewers. To our viewers, there will be a survey that will pop up at the end of this event. We ask that you please fill it out so we can take the feedback moving forward. But this event concludes our Rock the Lyceum series for the 2020-2021 academic year. So thanks again for joining us, and until next time. And we also want to give a special shout out to all the Eagle alums who participated in this Rock the Lyceum series because it was very special because they were returning to the nest. So it's because of them that we are able to leverage our legacy and continue to impact the world in positive ways. So I just want to say good night to everyone. Please be safe and make sure that your Eagle pride is always amplified. And that's on 1910.
Period.